After overhearing a shocking insult, I uncovered my DIL's true colors 24 hours to pack. Margaret's heart sank as she stood in the doorway of the living room, unable to grasp what she had just overheard. The laughter, invasive and sharp as a knife, filtered through the laughter of her daughter-in-law, Beth, with her friends. "Can you believe that old-fashioned hag?" Beth giggled, her voice laced with mockery. "Her weak intellect is such a burden. I mean, who needs the past when ambition is the future?" It settled like a heavy stone in the pit of Margaret's stomach, the very essence of everything she valued under attack. Was this how Beth truly viewed her? After years of sharing countless Sunday dinners around that old oak dining table, the warmth of their familial bond now felt distant, tainted by betrayal. As she stood frozen, feelings of hurt ricocheted inside her. She'd always viewed Beth as a daughter, a part of her family, but now the mask of charm revealed a more sinister devotion to ambition that unnerved her. Had she misjudged Beth all along? The hours seemed to stretch as Margaret replayed the conversation, her mind racing with disbelief. How could someone she loved speak so callously about the very principles she had dedicated her life to enforce? Determined to uncover Beth's character, Margaret began watching her with the scrutiny one would reserve for a student with hidden potential. Amidst the checkered past of a bakery that had molded generations of their family, she sifted through old records and notes, shocked to discover Beth's maneuverings behind the scenes as if they were tantamount to a high-stakes game. Alarm bells rang. Beth was plotting to take control of the family bakery, a cherished legacy, one that had always represented persistence, unity, and hope. Was this ambition worth tearing apart the very fabric of family? The walls of that familiar kitchen suddenly felt claustrophobic. Whispers of 24 hours to pack echoed through her thoughts as panic twisted in her gut. Could she stand by silently while her son, Jake, unknowingly entwined himself with a woman whose hunger for success could devastate them all? Each moment of hesitation threatened to taint their family more, ripping apart the loyalty they had once nurtured. Did love mean lying to protect those you cared for? Or standing up for truth even as it threatened the very bonds you sought to defend? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension hung heavy in the kitchen like the aroma of fresh-baked bread, now a bitter reminder of their potential dissolution. As she finally gathered the courage to confront her children, Margaret's breath quickened, muscles tightening in apprehension. The truth felt poised on her lips, yet an invisible weight urged her to hesitate. What if this fractured everything she cherished? Should she risk the heart of their family for the sake of revelations that could shatter their intertwined lives? Just as Margaret steadied herself for the confrontation, the doorbell rang, cutting through the thick silence. It echoed around the room, leaving everyone wide-eyed and suspended in dread. What new trouble awaited them on the other side? Margaret paused, her heart racing as the doorbell's chime rattled through her. Her hand trembled slightly as she considered the implications of answering it. Could it be her son, Jake, or perhaps a neighbor? No, she would not get lost in unverified thoughts. She needed clarity first. Frustration combined with desperation coursed through her as she took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of warm bread. "Mom, are you going to get that?" Jake's voice called from the other room, pulling her back to reality. The implication of his casual question drove another wave of conflict through her. Did Jake have any clue about what lay simmering beneath their domestic facade? Steeling herself, she moved towards the door, her palms sweaty against the door handle. Whatever awaited her beyond that wooden barrier, she had to confront it. Opening the door revealed an unexpected visitor. Mary, her best friend from the bakery community, stood on the porch with a concerned expression. "Margaret, I was just passing by and thought I'd check in. You look a bit pale," she said with genuine worry. Margaret forced a smile, the tension in her chest coiling tighter. Mary's presence felt like a lifeline amid the chaos swirling in her mind, yet the weight of her motivation still weighed heavily. "Can we talk inside?" she asked, her voice slightly wavering. Once inside, the coziness of the kitchen starkly contrasted with the turmoil inside Margaret. She gestured for Mary to sit at the table, its oak surface scratched by the years of family dinners that now felt like an unrelated past. I overheard Beth talking about me about the bakery. It's all too much, Mary. I don't know what to do. Mary looked intently at her, the light reflecting off her glasses, revealing a glimmer of understanding. You've always taken the high road, Margaret. But sometimes it's necessary to confront the truth, no matter how difficult it feels. The word struck a chord deep within Margaret. Confrontation was alien to her. She had been raised to foster harmony, yet how often had that very principle shielded her from necessary truths? But if I confront Beth, I risk losing Jake. What if he sees me as the villain? The thought was nauseating. Or the truth-teller. Mary interjected gently, her eyes steady. You've prepared the bakery to withstand storms for decades. Would you stand by and let it fall into the hands of someone who sees it as a mere stepping stone? Margaret's mind raced. Mary's reasoning acted like a mirror, reflecting the cracks in her worldview that long remained unexamined. Had she been too complacent, too willing to let love blind her to betrayal? Each moment she hesitated allowed Beth to further entrench herself in the family she had always thought was steadfast. I know I need to confront her, Margaret realized, determination flickering like a candle flame. But I fear it more than anything. I can't let emotion dictate my actions. There must be a strategic way to do this. Mary nodded. Start documenting what you've found. Gather your thoughts before plunging into the deep end. You need a plan. Margaret leaned back in her chair, feeling empowered yet alert to the daunting task ahead. Each moment spent plotting her strategy signaled a step toward reclaiming her voice, and perhaps her sense of worth. The bakery meant more than just flour and yeast. It embodied the labor of love she had poured into her family's legacy. As she began to outline her thoughts in her head, the doorbell rang again. Margaret's pulse quickened. Who could it be now? Passionate confrontations sometimes came tied to unexpected visitors, and the stakes were only getting higher. Was her family about to be irrevocably altered? The moment beckoned for her to rise and answer, or to retreat into denial once more. There was no turning back now. This was her chance to reclaim everything she held dear. Would she grasp it, or would she let it slip away again? Margaret's heart pounded as she glanced toward the door, caught between the urge to shield herself and the need to confront the unpredictable tide of visitors. Gathering the courage, she took a breath and opened the door. There stood Jake, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Hey Mom, everything all right? He glanced past her and noticed Mary sitting at the kitchen table with an expectant look, their exchange clearly charged with tension. Yeah, just a lot on my mind, she stammered, wishing she could articulate the storm brewing in her heart. The familiar scent of warm bread that once filled the room with comfort now felt stifling, a reminder of the helplessness gnawing at her. Can I help? Jake offered, taking a step closer, his youthful optimism stark in contrast to her turmoil. No, she blurted out, then softened her tone. Not right now. The defensive edge in her voice surprised even her. Why did she feel the need to keep the burdens of adult conflicts hidden from him? He deserved clarity, but she was terrified of the implications. Mary stood, sensing the charged atmosphere, and played her role as a mediator. Jake, why don't you give us a moment? I need to talk to your mom about something important. As he nodded reluctantly and headed toward his room, the silence that followed felt pregnant with unresolved tension. Once the door closed, a new weight pressed down on Margaret. What if I lose him in this? She muttered, brow creased in worry. Mary took the seat back, her demeanor calm yet insistent. You won't lose him, Margaret. If anything, confronting Beth will teach him the importance of loyalty and honesty. You're not just defending the bakery. You're defending your family's integrity. A sense of clarity began to break through her fog of uncertainty, each of Mary's words slicing through the haze. What if confronting Beth only deepens the rift? Margaret questioned, her internal battle flaring up. The thought tied her stomach into knots. What if my actions backfire? Mary leaned forward, her earnest eyes coaxing Margaret to risk vulnerability. But what if they don't? What if standing up for yourself shifts the whole dynamic? You've allowed your fear of conflict to dictate your path for too long. This is about more than just you and Beth. It's about Jake seeing you as someone who stands tall when faced with adversity. Margaret's thoughts raced as she weighed Mary's encouragement against her instinctual urge to avoid confrontation. Documenting her findings about Beth hadn't seemed daunting until now. It felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Would she be ready for the fallout? All right, Margaret finally resolved, feeling a small ember of determination spark to life within her chest. I'll start by assembling everything I know about Beth. I need to enter this prepared, not impulsive. Mary smiled, exuding reassurance. That's the spirit. Remember, emotional clarity goes hand in hand with strategic execution. Margaret appreciated the shift in her mindset. Professional development could truly emerge from personal upheaval. She began mentally crafting her approach, assessing the strengths and flaws in her arguments, preparing for potential counters Beth might throw. Then, just as Margaret felt the first threads of her newfound resolve begin to weave into a tapestry of strategy, the doorbell rang a third time. What now? She muttered, irritation and anxiety clashing within her. The door creaked ajar before she could move toward it. Standing there was Beth, a disarming smile plastered across her face, eyes shimmering with an unsettling confidence. Margaret froze, the gravity of the upcoming confrontation settling heavily upon her shoulders. She felt poised on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap but unsure of her landing. The moment of truth had arrived, and Margaret knew whatever Beth was about to say could determine the course of her future both personally and professionally. Would she summon the courage to stand up? Or would she crumble under the weight of her emotions? The world outside seemed too bright and vivid as Margaret's eyes locked onto Beth's. That smile, confident, unwavering, ignited a fire of resolve within her. Taking in a shaky breath, she adjusted her posture, reminding herself of the clarity Mary had instilled. This moment was not merely a confrontation. It was the first step towards her own reclamation. Her professional life depended on it. Margaret, Beth chirped, her voice sweet but laced with an edge that sent a shiver through Margaret's spine. I hope I'm not interrupting anything too important. No, you're not, Margaret managed to reply, somewhat surprised by the steadiness in her voice. She stepped aside, allowing Beth entry into her home but made no move to usher her further in. The kitchen, once a cozy sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield where emotions clashed openly. I've been meaning to discuss something that's been on my mind, Beth continued, exuding a casual charm that cleverly disguised the deeper, more combative undertones. Let us get to the point, Margaret interjected, her tone sharper than she intended but necessary to establish her authority. She felt the initial pulse of adrenaline and electric current that signaled she was claiming her ground. Beneath the surface, however, nerves twisted like vines, reminding her of the stakes. Her bakery, her integrity, her relationship with Jake. Beth's smile faltered for a fleeting moment before it returned, more of a mask than ever. I appreciate your directness. I didn't expect you to be so upfront. But things have changed, dear. Changed how? Margaret pressed, her heart racing faster. The straightforwardness she was attempting to emulate left no room for ambiguity. Your business model, Beth said, gesturing nonchalantly. I've heard some interesting feedback. People aren't as loyal to your bakery as you think. Might want to reconsider your strategies. The words landed like stones, heavy and unyielding. Margaret felt the sting of betrayal and anger welling up inside her. Beth was not merely targeting her business. She was slandering the very foundation of her hard work. The protective walls around her heart, once reinforced by fear and doubt, were beginning to crack under the strain of this insidious assault. You think undermining me will elevate you? Margaret spat, the truth of her words thickening the air. You've spent too long trying to make me feel small. But my bakery is built on more than fleeting loyalty. It represents my passion, my family's legacy. Beth shrugged, a faux innocent gesture that only fueled Margaret's fire. Oh, come now. Don't take it so personally. Business is business. It's just good to know when to pivot, right? Margaret recognized the patronizing tone, and the realization struck like a lightning bolt. She was not just an owner of a bakery, she was a competitive strategist. Efficiently, she began recalibrating her approach to the situation. It was time to fight with knowledge. Tell me, Beth, she said, eyes narrowing, do you think people will respect someone who resorts to underhanded tactics instead of building a foundation on trust? Beth's expression faltered for a heartbeat before her facade hardened. This isn't about respect, Margaret. Then what is it about? Margaret questioned, each word deliberate and weighted with conviction. The silence hung heavily between them, punctuated by the ticking clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. This was no longer just a meeting of rivals, it was a reveal of character. In that instant, clarity washed over Margaret, igniting her determination. She wasn't merely defending her bakery anymore. She was reclaiming her identity and self-worth. The fog of uncertainty had vanished, and in its place stood an empowered woman. But just as she felt that empowering surge, a thought struck her. Would confronting Beth directly drive her further into retaliation, or would it prompt a change? In this moment of hesitation, she knew that the confrontation had only begun. What type of fight would her instincts guide her to? She wasn't yet ready to make definitive moves. The air between them crackled with tension, and Margaret sensed that this was not the end. Beth's response would be critical. One wrong step, and it could open an entirely new chapter in their battle. Would she hold fast, or would she allow doubt to lace her next move? The silence lingered, thick and suffocating, until Beth finally spoke again, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You're showing your true colors, Margaret. What's in it for you to keep this facade? Just because you've built something doesn't mean it can't crumble. Let us be honest. You're not as untouchable as you believe." Margaret clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she fought a surge of panic. She felt the walls of her sanctuary closing in, but beneath that, a sense of urgency propelled her to act decisively. Not only was her bakery on the line, but her sense of self was as well. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now transforming into a fierce desire for clarity. "You might think you know my worth," she retorted, her voice steady, "but let me remind you that I started from nothing, built my bakery through blood, sweat, and tears. You can't undermine my passion." A flicker of surprise crossed Beth's face, and Margaret reveled in that moment. It was a small victory, but it confirmed she was no longer the timid proprietor of a rustic bakery. She was a formidable player in this game of business, one that had stakes far beyond the profits. Beth leaned closer, her voice low, simmering with malicious delight. "But passion doesn't pay the bills or win customers. You need fresh ideas, Margaret, something to jazz up your stale image. Maybe you should consider a partnership with someone who has a little more clout. Could boost your visibility." A wave of realization broke over Margaret. This was not merely a business discussion. It was a veiled threat. Beth was trying to coerce and manipulate her into a decision based on fear and insecurity. It was time to take control. "Are you threatening me?" Margaret pressed, channeling the same firmness she had directed at the stubborn dough she kneaded every morning. Beth smirked, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. The shift was palpable. Margaret could feel it. "I'm just saying it would be advantageous for you. We both know how vital perception is in this industry." "Perception, yes. But it's worthless when built on lies and intimidation," Margaret snapped back. "I would rather struggle than sully my reputation by associating with someone like you." As she spoke, a fierce thrill coursed through her. This wasn't just about standing firm. This was an assertion of her growth, her evolution. With each word, Margaret peeled away the layers of doubt she had been carrying for too long. She was claiming not only her bakery but her entire identity. Beth crossed her arms, her charming demeanor cracking. "You really think you're invincible? Think again. What happens when people don't want to buy your pastries anymore? What then?" The question hung in the air, stark and menacing. It forced Margaret to confront a fear she had carefully avoided. What if she became irrelevant? But instead of shying away, she chose to confront it head-on. "Then I'll innovate. I'll adapt. I'm not afraid of hard work. And I certainly won't let fear dictate my decisions." This proclamation sent a jolt of energy through her. With every statement, Margaret felt the embers of her strategy igniting into a flame. She was no longer just defending something. She was actively creating a pathway forward. Beth's face shifted, losing its confidence, revealing a crack beneath the artificial veneer. "You're making a mistake by standing alone, Margaret." "Perhaps," she admitted, "but I'd rather be alone, rooted in integrity, than partnered with someone who thrives on deceit." The realization that her greatest assets were her principles, and the loyal customers who believed in her, solidified her resolve. As their heated exchange reached a breaking point, Margaret glimpsed a vital insight. She not only needed to protect her bakery, but also cultivate her brand and its story. It was time to refocus on her strengths and reconnect with her community. Her professional development no longer hinged on the whims of others. Just as Beth turned to leave, Margaret called out, "You may have your game, but I have mine. And believe me, it's about to change." Margaret's heart raced, but not out of fear. This was the thrill of opportunity, a new chapter on the horizon. But lurking behind the exhilaration was a weighty question. How far was she willing to go to protect what was hers? Caught between past fears and future possibilities, Margaret stood resolute, ready to take the next bold step. But the shadows of betrayal still loomed, hinting that Beth wouldn't let go easily. What schemes might Beth engineer in retaliation, and how would Margaret counteract them? The pivotal clash lay ahead. Margaret leaned against the cool wall of her bakery, heart pounding fiercely in her chest. The confrontation had left her breathless but alive. No longer was she the woman who felt trapped by the opinions of others. This was her moment of awakening, a tough but empowering realization that she could carve out her path without compromise. The intoxicating scent of freshly baked pastries wafted through the air, mingling with the adrenaline still surging through her veins. For months she had relied on the same recipes, the same marketing approach, and the same routine. Now, Margaret understood that maintaining her bakery's relevance required bold reinvention. Stale ideas needed to be tossed aside, just like those loaves that came out of the oven charred beyond recognition. She turned her back on the fading tension of the last exchange and focused on what mattered next. Picking up a notepad, she began jotting down ideas, each stroke of the pen revitalizing her resolve. What flavors had fallen by the wayside? What partnerships could she nurture that showcased her artistry while honoring her principles? She thought of local farmers, artisan cheesemakers, and organic coffee roasters, the vibrant elements of her community that had originally inspired her. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow through the window, Margaret's enthusiasm kindled new energy within her. She envisioned hosting Flavor Fridays, where each week she would experiment with unexpected flavor combinations, perhaps inviting local chefs to collaborate. This would not only reignite interest but also build a stronger connection with her clientele. No longer would she allow her voice to be muffled by threats or intimidation. It was time to reclaim control not merely over her bakery, but over her narrative. But a creeping doubt lingered. Could she pull this off alone? Her confrontations with Beth had exposed a side of herself she had muted for years. Yet the idea of venturing forward without an ally bewildered her. She took a deep breath, grappling with her own vulnerability. It was in these moments of doubt that she discovered hidden strengths, the untapped wells of creativity and resilience she had yet to draw from. In the back of her mind, Beth's smirk echoed, a haunting reminder of the games people play. She wouldn't let her fear of isolation deter her from her path. Instead, she decided to approach the situation differently. Collaboration doesn't necessitate compromise, she whispered to herself, the words solidifying into a mantra. Perhaps she could reach out to fellow local business owners not merely for collaboration, but to create a supportive network for all of them to thrive together. Ideas flourished when nurtured by communal trust, rather than competitive fear. Formatting an email to some of her closest peers, she articulated her venture into a new chapter for the bakery. The invitation was clear. Join her in creating something spectacular that highlighted their individual strengths. There, she realized, lay the power of her growth. Not in isolation but in collective support. As she hit send, a newfound clarity washed over her. She was no longer alone. Whatever Beth conjured next wouldn't matter if she focused on what she could control. But with every ounce of exhilaration came the intimidating prospect of potential backlash. Would Beth retaliate? It was easy to underestimate an opponent who thrived on intimidation, a lesson Margaret had learned the hard way. Now her commitment to her values was intertwined with her dreams, fueling an urgency she had never felt before. Time ticked forward, and Margaret felt the weight of the last confrontation press upon her. The shadows stirred once again. Not everyone would welcome her bold moves, especially those who thrived on fear. The question nagged. Was she ready to face the inevitable turbulence that accompanied her pursuit of authenticity? With each pastry she crafted and every idea she laid to rest, Margaret prepared herself for the inevitable clash ahead. Through her evolving bakery, a reckoning loomed on the horizon, teasing both a triumph and a confrontation. The road ahead was laden with uncertainty, yet she felt alive, ready to turn the page. Would the risk of innovation pay off, or would she open herself to more ruinous threats? The stakes had never been higher, and Margaret was ready to confront whatever chaos awaited her. Margaret woke to the sound of clattering pans from the kitchen, the comforting rhythms of her bakery offering a backdrop to her restless mind. The sun streamed through the window, painting the room in hues of gold, yet the potential backlash from her bold outreach loomed heavily on her thoughts. She stood up, willing her anxiety to dissipate with each step toward the counter where her plans awaited. The pastries cooling on the rack bore a promise of joy, yet Margaret felt untethered, grappling with the fragility of her newfound courage. She reminded herself that innovation was a risk, one that required a willingness to embrace the unpredictable. Could she truly expect those she had withered under for so long to support her? The image of Beth's disdainful smile flickered in her mind, a specter of looming threats. She busied herself with the tasks at hand. Kneading dough, she found her rhythm a physical manifestation of her internal struggle. Each press of her palm into the soft mass was a confrontation between the self-doubt that lingered in her core and the determination gathering strength like the rising yeast. The dough, with its potential to become something greater, mirrored her quest for evolution. The clock neared 11. Soon the bakery would open its doors. She had taken small steps before, launching a seasonal offering here and there, but now she felt the storm of transformation brewing within her. Holding back her creativity had stunted not only her professional journey but her sense of self. The realization was both sobering and electrifying. Around noon, customers trickled in, their chatter a comforting hum that momentarily soothed her nerves. They were the heartbeat of her bakery, loyal patrons who marveled at her pastries. Just as she swept the last crumbs from the counter, a couple entered, drawn by the alluring scents. Little did they know they were stepping into an evolving narrative of resilience. Margaret felt an invigoration as she engaged with them, sharing stories of flavors she planned to unveil. Each conversation unfurled threads of enthusiasm that she was surprised to find resonated deeply with her customers. They spoke eagerly about their preferences, excitement illuminating their faces as they discussed what they missed or wanted to see. Yet beneath her growing confidence, a chilling doubt festered. Would these newfound connections hold if Beth decided to undermine her efforts? Shivers danced up her spine as she recalled the whispers she had overheard about Beth's disdain for her new direction, that she'd defuel the gossip machine should Margaret step too far out of line. Later that evening, as the last customer departed and tranquility returned to the bakery, Margaret reflected on the day with a bittersweet ache. Success felt closer, yet the risk seemed to multiply. The phone buzzed with notifications, emails from her peers responding to her invitation. Each one echoed an affirmation of her vision, yet the pit of her stomach churned with uncertainty. Would they be there when the wind turned against her? With a new email thread spiraling into creation, she felt fettered by doubt again. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, thoughts racing. What if she didn't receive the collaboration she so desperately sought? Would isolation coldly descend upon her bakery once more? The back and forth of her mind reflected the chaotic mixing of ingredients she experienced earlier, creative freedom and fear awkwardly clashing. Finally, she hit send, inviting her peers to a brainstorming meeting, a gathering designed to consolidate her ideas and amplify their collective strengths. A decision had been made, but the impending meeting felt like a stage upon which to confront both potential allyship and gross betrayal. Just then, the round metal sign jingled as the front door swung open, revealing a shadow stepping in. Margaret's heart leaped into her throat. Before she could register their intent, she recognized the figure, Beth, striding toward her with an unsettling confidence that sent a chill through the air. Like the unmistakable prelude to an approaching storm, Margaret straightened herself as their eyes locked. The question loomed large. Would she stand her ground, or would the fear of reprisal from her old foe force her back into the confines of conformity? The moment of truth had arrived, and Margaret braced herself, heart racing at the choices unfolding before her. The plans she'd set in motion were fragile yet urgent, teetering on the brink of an uncertain future. Would her resolve withstand the confrontation ahead, or would past fears resurface to haunt her again? Margaret's stomach coiled tightly as Beth approached, the confident stride cloaked in layers of intimidation. Their history hung between them like a heavy curtain, filled with past dismissals and unspoken rivalries. With each step Beth took, Margaret felt the weight of the bakery's promise teeter precariously, wrapped in the tension of impending confrontation. What a delightful reform you've made here, Beth began, her voice dripping with feigned cordiality. I must say it's beyond me how you've managed to leverage your little bakery into what did you call it? A culinary revolution? Margaret could almost hear the quotation marks around the last phrase, a mocking reminder of her recent aspirations. Drawing a breath, Margaret refused to wilt under the scrutiny. Thanks, Beth. I believe innovation is necessary in our line of work, especially if we want to grow, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Echoes of the customer's enthusiasm from earlier surfaced, fueling her self-assertion. Is that really what you think? Beth's eyes narrowed slightly, her confidence unyielding. It takes more than just a sprinkle of creativity to bring about change. I hope you know what you're doing. Each word was laced with an undercurrent of threat, a silent challenge for Margaret to shrink back to the shadows. Margaret resisted the pull of self-doubt that Beth expertly ignited. She met Beth's gaze, choosing to stand firm. This was her moment, a culmination of a restless journey marked by resistance. I'm ready to rise, Beth. I have my community behind me, Margaret said pointedly, invoking the warmth of her loyal customers, their joy a promise she swore to fulfill. At that moment, the bakery seemed to hum with life. Outside, a few customers lingered, exchanging laughs and stories while sharing samples of her latest confections. Within that atmosphere, Margaret drew strength. It wasn't just her ambition at stake. It was the community she felt bound to create. Beth's confident smile wavered for a moment, frustration flickering in her eyes before she masked it with superficial amusement. We'll see how long that lasts, won't we? The old adage what goes up must come down holds true, dear. With that, she pivoted on her heel and sauntered toward the exit, the bell jangling ominously as the door closed behind her. Margaret's resolve was tested in the wake of Beth's departure. The conversation echoed in her mind, but instead of retreating into unease, she steeled her determination. Her vision for the bakery wasn't merely about baking pastries. It was about cultivating resilience in her craft, resilience she needed to embrace within herself. As night descended and the warm glow of the bakery's lights shimmered, Margaret opened her laptop, her heart racing with purpose rather than doubt. She crafted the agenda for the upcoming brainstorming meeting, allowing her initial fears to kind of translate into actionable strategies. This would be her platform, a place for shared ideas, strength through collaboration. Yet, an urgency flickered beneath her newfound determination. What would happen if Beth attempted to sabotage her plans? If her so-called support turned out to be nothing more than whispers behind her back? Her thoughts spiraled, tethering to insecurities, but Margaret quickly squashed them down. She needed power, the kind that surged through allies and the trust of her dedicated patrons. Margaret spent the next hour flooding her pages with ideas, organizing each detail meticulously as if laying a blueprint for her future. Suddenly, fatigue washed over her. Closing her laptop, she glanced at her reflection in the window, a figure drawn with shadows of uncertainty, but illuminated by sparks of resolve. The rhythm of her heart echoed again, a quiet beating that resonated with her control over the bakery's destiny. Outside, the moonlight cast a serene veil over the world, and in the calm, Margaret saw the potential for revolution within herself, echoing the daring desires for her business. Just then, a knock on the door startled her from contemplation. As she turned, she caught a glimpse of the familiar outline of her closest friend, Anna, who had supported her from the start. "Hey, Margaret. Got a minute? We need to talk." Anna's voice rang clear, frayed with urgency. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. Her heart drummed anxiously as she sensed her friend held news with weight. Could it be about the very meeting she had just planned? The moment seemed pivotal, a portal to decisions that could reshape everything. "Of course, come in," she managed, a sense of expectancy igniting a flame of possibility within her. What revelation would unfold next? Would it bolster her newfound determination, or throw her plans into further chaos? The tension hung palpably in the air as she braced herself for what was to come. Anna stepped inside, the door's chime punctuating the stillness of the bakery. Her expression was a mixture of concern and fierce determination. As she closed the door, Margaret could see the gravity in her eyes, stirring a sense of unease in the pit of her stomach. "Margaret, I've just come from the cafe down the street," Anna said, lowering her voice as if someone could overhear. "I heard something you need to know something about Beth." Wide-eyed, Margaret's heart raced. The walls of her bakery suddenly felt thicker, the air heavier with anticipation. What about her? She prompted, a slight irritation rising within her. She didn't want to allow Beth's influence to worm its way back into her mind. She was there, discussing the potential for your upcoming meeting, Anna replied, crossing her arms over her chest. And let me tell you the things she said. Her voice trailed off, and Margaret felt the weight of her doubt creeping back in. What did she say? Margaret pressed, trying to maintain a facade of calm. She fought the urge to turn her initial concern into a protective armor. Anna hesitated, and the silence seemed to stretch infinitely. She implied that you wouldn't last long in this business, said your little revolutionary phase would fizzle out like a dying flame. Margaret's breath caught. The flame she'd felt igniting inside her now wavered, threatened by the winds of someone else's judgment. She might have withered under this kind of news in the past, but today felt different. The urgency of Anna's message stirred the potential for rise or collapse, the choice laid at her feet. I can't let her get to me, Margaret finally said, the flicker of her resolve sparking once again. I need to be resilient. Anna, sensing the storm brewing within her friend, nodded. Exactly. You can't let her undermine everything you've built. This bakery isn't just a shop to you. It's your passion, your revolution. You have this community that supports you no matter what Beth says. Margaret felt a swell of determination. Reality was harsh. Beth's words might hold weight in some circles. Yet she had built her establishment from the ground up, nurturing it with care, love, and a sense of passionate creativity that pulsed through every pastry. What should I do? Margaret pondered silently, already questioning her next steps. The more she thought about it, the clearer her focus became. Her competitive nature had been ignited by Beth's challenge. She could use it to craft a strategic response. Hold the meeting as planned, Anna urged. Don't let her momentum overshadow what you're trying to create. Cultivate your allies. This is your moment to strengthen relationships, to show everyone what you're really capable of. Margaret grinned, the earlier ripple of fear settling into a warm glow of motivation. You're right, Anna. I know what I need to do. Beth's words might sting, but I can't let them define my journey. With newfound clarity, Margaret pulled out her laptop, her fingers dancing over the keys as she mapped a layout for the meeting. She envisioned each contributor's voice, every creative spark where ideas could intertwine, pushing aside any remnants of Beth's negativity as mere dissonance in her symphony of aspirations. Let us make this brainstorming session a celebration of innovation, she declared. Let us fuel the fire of creativity. Anna's smile was infectious. Now that's the Margaret I know. You've got this. As they continued to discuss potential ideas and collaborations, Margaret felt the anxiety dissipate, replaced by the burgeoning strength she so desperately sought. She now stood at a critical crossroads. The very air in the bakery pulsed with a new energy, an invisible thread weaving resilience and ambition into a tapestry of success. Just then, a clattering noise interrupted their conversation. The window rattled slightly as a gust of wind blew through the door, bringing with it a sense of unpredictable excitement. Margaret looked at Anna, her heart racing once more, an uneasy feeling creeping in. Did you hear that? Anna asked, her brow furrowing. Margaret nodded, wondering whether this shift in the atmosphere signaled something darker, looming just beyond the borders of her bakery's cozy sanctuary. What would happen when the doors swung open, not just to their allies but to potential adversaries too? Suddenly she felt that the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. Would her strategies hold strong enough against the currents Beth might unleash? The impending meeting felt like a battleground, a place for strategy, yes, but also for potential conflict. And with conflict came uncertainty. Anna's voice pulled her back. Margaret, we've got a lot of work ahead. Let us keep pushing forward. Margaret looked at her friend, determination solidifying into a potent realization. You're right. The time to face the real challenge is approaching. With a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, Margaret embraced the brewing storm outside. It was time for not just her bakery, but her very essence, to rise against the turbulent winds ahead. Would her preparations suffice, or would new revelations threaten to destabilize everything? As they moved forward together, Margaret felt a battle cry of sorts coalescing within her. The moment of truth was not far off, and she could feel it, looming on the horizon, waiting to challenge her resolve. Margaret stood at the door of her bakery, the sun casting golden rays onto the neighborhood, as she prepared to welcome collaborators and friends into her new vision. The latest storm of her confrontation with Beth had forged a path to clarity, and she had cultivated both courage and a fierce ambition that now forged through her veins like a warm current. There was no turning back. Her newly defined sense of self swelled within her, weaving resilience into the very fabric of her bakery. As the participants of her brainstorming meeting began to arrive, chatting excitedly about the potential changes ahead, Margaret felt an exhilarating confidence blossom in her heart. Each smile, each spark of creativity among her peers reinforced her knowledge. This wasn't merely a business. It was a community built on mutual dreams and successes. Mere hours ago, she had felt shackled by self-doubt and outside intimidation, yet now, surrounded by supportive allies, the air crackled with anticipation. "Welcome, everyone," she exclaimed, the words spilling out with heartfelt enthusiasm. "I'm genuinely thrilled to see you all here today." Their laughter and encouragement filled the space, infusing it with the warmth she longed to see flourish within her bakery's walls. The meeting commenced with an exhilarating brainstorming session, each voice layering onto the next, building a tapestry of ideas. They discussed partnerships with local farms, flavors that spoke to the season, and even creative marketing initiatives that would spotlight the baking talents in their tight-knit circle. Margaret's fears of isolation dissipated, replaced by a newfound energy and purpose that excited her. Visionaries and doers congregating sparked something powerful inside her, a deeper sense of identity rooted firmly in collaboration, rather than competition. The conversation flowed, ideas blossomed, and her bakery transformed right before her eyes into a vibrant hub of reinvention. Ideas proliferated every corner of that wooden table, which told stories of family history. No longer an echo of just Margaret's voice. This was a collective symphony of aspirations. As the brainstorming gathered momentum, it became clear that they were not just pointing out what the bakery could do. They were laying the foundation for its future, a future rich with connections and creativity. Margaret took a moment to absorb the atmosphere around her. She had comfortably transitioned from an uncertain baker to an inspiring leader, firm in her conviction to elevate the craftsmanship she had enjoyed for years. Her resolve solidified as she understood deeply that she was not merely preserving her bakery for herself. This was about fostering community, where relationships thrived amidst shared passion. As the session wrapped up, one of her peers, Rachel, spoke up. "Margaret, your leadership today was incredible. You held space for all our ideas, and we're excited to see where this leads us." It was a powerful acknowledgement, one that ignited a sense of recognition deep within her. Margaret's heart swelled with pride, an emotion far removed from the confinement she once felt. "Thank you. This bakery has always been about our shared love for baking and community," she responded, her voice steady and confident. "We've taken the first bold steps towards something exciting and fresh. I'm proud to have you all on this journey with me." The collaborative atmosphere galvanized new plans that filled the weeks ahead with promise, and with each passing day, Margaret felt affirmed in her direction. She reached out to local farmers, artisan producers, and small businesses, breathing life back into her vision. With each partnership forged, her reputation flourished. Her bakery's name became synonymous with love and authenticity. Weeks turned to months, and as the first Flavor Fridays unfurled to enthusiastic crowds, Margaret marveled at the evolution of her craft. Each pastry spoke of the community's spirit and her unwavering commitment to integrity. As customers savored her creativity and innovation, Beth's remnants of doubt became mere whispers, drowned out by the collective support and love surrounding her. Yet, Margaret knew the true test loomed if Beth would simply retreat in the face of success or return, determined to breach the newfound peace. That apprehension lingered, but it no longer ruled her heart. She had conquered her fears and transformed them into steely resolve. The clock inched forward. With every pastry turned out, every lively conversation shared, she felt a newfound stability anchoring her purpose. Margaret was not alone. She was surrounded by allies bound in ambition and love. Ultimately, she looked towards her future with solid confidence. Through taking control of her bakery, she reclaimed her self-worth, her vision, and solidified her position as a leader among peers. This was not just a personal victory, but the beginning of a larger story, one that showcased the potential for change, not just within her bakery, but throughout her life. Today marks not simply the end of a chapter, but the commencement of a lifelong dedication to true personal and professional fulfillment. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey. Don't wait even one more second to share. Show your support.